Thank you, Lauren. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today. I remember the first time we met and you came here to bring some work to fire, and you pulled out all these cheeses, and each face had like bursting with personality. So for me, it was love at first cheese.
Yeah, that was cute. That was before y'all opened.
Yes, yeah. It was just before we opened. It was in December. We did our soft opening in the middle of January. So Lauren was our inaugural artist firing in our kilns. So it was really great to meet you then. And since then, it's been such a treat to see your extremely dedicated practice and all of the work that you've been coming up with.
Oh, they're showing our work behind us now. And
that's right.
I don't know if
that's
we're
Mama's mad.
Yeah. Well, this is Biata's work. So it's going to be sort of this back and forth showing Biata's work and my work, which I think really makes sense together. But maybe since this is like, we're doing this as a conversation. I'm like, I got no shoes on. I'm chilling.
Oh, I might keep my shoes on.
You can keep your shoes on.
We're fine.
On. Okay. So I think maybe we can start by talking about how we even got to ceramics.
Yes.
I can do that first, and
sure.
Then we can parlay.
How did you get into ceramics, Lauren?
All right. So I don't consider myself a ceramicist. I am an artist that uses also ceramics within my practice. It's a pretty diverse multifaceted practice. I basically create these drawings and graphic novels, and within those novels there are characters that kind of come out that I draw. And mostly it's a female naked protagonist, which is me, and it's autobiographical fiction, so she's embellished and exaggerated. And that woman goes through all of these different experiences and jobs that I curate, that Lauren, me, actually lives and does, like a cue card girl or a gallerina, or I was gardening for a billionaire in Westport, Connecticut, and that's real. And it wasn't Martha Stewart, but I said in one of my books that it was. So within these graphic novels, the characters need objects and they need things that they own or that they use. And so I use ceramics to sculpt those things. So it's all like a fictional universe, but it is sort of based in reality because I'm really living this stuff. But yeah, so ceramics is kind of like began for me in 2020. And the first sculptural pieces that I made was a reaction to George Floyd getting murdered. And so they were these figurative pieces that looked like people killing each other or suffocating each other. They were doing really awful things. And I was thinking a lot about when I was at the Joseph and Annie Albers residency about Joseph Albers going to Mexico to photograph all of these pre-Columbian sculptural pieces. And his fascination with how they looked very like realistic, even though this is like, 500 BC. So a lot of those early pieces in 2020 looked like that, reminiscent of that. And I started drawing more, making more graphic novels. Also, what coincides with my work is mental health. I've been in therapy for the last 6 or 7 years. So it's sort of this journey of thinking a lot about myself and my relationships to my father, to my brother, to different male figures in my life. And that all shows up in these drawings. Then we go to ceramics, and I also do painting, and it's like a whole universe. So that's where ceramics started for me. So it's really not that long ago. But there were the therapeutic qualities of working with clay and sculpting where I felt with all of the stress and all of the anxieties of what was going on, even with the pandemic, that I could process through sculpting.
That's interesting. Sometimes I find ceramics like a kind of a stressful process when you're
well, yours is a little different.
Trying to make something survive all the different weird temperatures that you're bringing things through and different, making clay do things that it doesn't necessarily want to do.
Well, a lot of my pieces are wonky and they're a little messed up.
Right.
I don't know if you've noticed, like if you flip them over, there's cracks. These are not functional. If you ever put tea in one of the cups, it's going to have a problem.
Yeah.
But how did you get into your world of clay?
So as I went to school for illustration, I was a 2D artist for a while, and then I took a sculpture class, and I found that it made a lot more sense to me to sculpt or to work in 3 dimensions rather than painting and drawing. So, it was actually a really funny way to get into ceramics, but I was opening a bank account, and the teller there was like, "Oh, what do you do at school?" And so I told him that I study illustration, but I'm also interested in learning more about sculpture. "Oh, I work at this ceramic studio. You should come and check it out. We're taking interns." And so, and I did that. And then I apprenticed there. I apprenticed with an artist named Judy Fox, who also makes these really beautiful ceramic sculptures. And I was a teacher assistant to Christina Cordova, who is another amazing contemporary ceramic artist and sculptor. So I learned a lot of techniques from both of them. And then in school, I continued to just do all of my work in clay. So I would photograph instead of drawing and all that stuff. And then, once you get into clay, you're kind of in it. So here we are.
Well, I'm in it, but
You're
also
in
in lots of other things.
That's right.
But for you, this is your passion. You're really in it. Are you drawing? Are you doing other stuff?
I am. I'm knitting.
What? That's, did that start during the pandemic?
Stressful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's therapeutic. I like that too.
Yeah, I think if I started trying to make actual projects or artwork that were knitted sculptures, it would be more stressful, but I'm just, playing around and making sweaters, sometimes like something for my kid, which is nice. But I really like fabric. It's easier on the hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, now that just came up, that image that I drew, I wanted to talk a little bit about why in our practices, like what are we actually doing? I mean, what's our subject matter? Like, it's always something with like female bodies, with nudity, with like something that's like powerful, but also edgy and a little bit like, I don't know, man. That's like your rat bitch right there.
That is my rat
That is your
bitch.
rat bitch. I know. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's happening in our work? What are we doing?
Well, I think, it's interesting looking back at this work now because it's from what feels like a different time in my life. I have taken this break from making my own work lately. So I'm excited to see what that looks like as a new parent and a person who is not really like in the thick of the same kinds of issues or emotions or
Well, let's go back
like
before you were mommy and before, like, I want to go, no, we're going back further. I want to know where these early thoughts of the female form and what's happening, because there is a lot of tension in your work that feels, it makes me nervous.
Oh.
There are things that happen.
Interesting.
Beata, do not like even deny.
Sexy.
Not about that.
No,
well, there is that tension of like these women that are very seductive. But then for me to even say that, why am I saying that? Because I've been shaped by society to think that this is something where they're alluding to.
That's what I don't think there's a problem with feeling
Like your
seduced.
twerking piece. I saw the twerking piece.
Yeah, and her face is melting off.
I know.
So
Okay, so what's up with that?
well, just
That was before you were mom.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go there.
Yeah. Well, the face melting off with the twerking, it was just really, for me, I thought it was a joke because there's all this twerking happening.
This was like what year? I don't know when twerking began. Can somebody?
For me, this was like, I think this
It was Miley
2016.
Cyrus twerking? Who was that?
No.
I don't know.
Miley Cyrus is not
Okay.
the first twerker. I would say ATL, like Atlanta ladies.
My apologies.
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
So anyway, but then it became Miley Cyrus twerking.
Right.
So that's when I thought
Reappropriated,
it was a
okay.
joke of,
Right.
that's my way of telling a joke.
Well, all right. So you're
What about
what?
what's going on
Oh,
here?
God. We're
Because
not-
I want to know about the cheese guys. Because
Okay.
those are my first.
Right. So we're jumping around, whatever. So, oh my God, I'm not going to look behind me. So basically, I can talk a little bit about the charcuterie situations with the people's faces in them. When I moved to New York, I moved here for two reasons. I moved here to find love, which is very honest, and I feel like I'm Carrie in Sex and the City right now. Sorry, but not sorry. I moved here for love, to find love. I was not in love. I needed to figure it out. And for my art career. So these were the two big beacons. And after like, I don't know, a year, I started realizing, oh my God, I have no network. I have nobody here. I don't know what am I doing. I need to just produce work, I guess. But I wasn't showing my artwork. So I started to try to think of another way through the pandemic to show my work. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna like actually make these outdoor booths, these markets or something, just in Park Slope. I live up the road. I'm like, okay. So I set up a 6-foot table and put a tablecloth, and I started putting my drawings, and not ceramics yet. That was too early. That came a little later. But with the drawings, I put it out in public, and people, there were two reactions. I would either get people that were really uneasy and like kind of mortified, and they would just scurry off, or you would get like a mom walking with like her family, with her husband, and she would like grab the guy's arm and be like, I told you, that's what I'm into. And it would be like a picture of like a woman like pegging a man or something. So, you know, it was very like open and suggestive, and like things that were a little taboo, I suppose. Like there were things that I think about. So I'm like, oh, I don't see any problem here. But it was a lot to like put out in, I mean, I don't know, Park Slope is...
They're your best audience.
Yeah, well, maybe that's true. But anyway, so ceramics came a little bit later, but I would put those out as well. And so the charcuterie table that you see in the back was supposed to be, it's me feeling very like lonely and wanting to have like a party or a gathering or something with people. And for the first, as I said, like couple of years of living in New York, I didn't know anyone. So it was a very like isolating, pre-pandemic, still feeling isolated. And I do have a lot of, here we go, let's tell you all. I have trouble with like interpersonal skills, and I'm extroverted where I can be like this and be animated and like excited and blah, 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 and talk. But like, I don't understand human dynamics very well. There's sort of a disconnect that happens, and I get really like anxious and nervous because I don't know what y'all are thinking or feeling in the moment. And so I tend to not get close with people unless I can really like understand you and what's going on there. So I am neurodiverse, and there are just some things that are challenging for me. So within all of that, I was like, all right, well, I got to do these markets, and I got to like go out there. And so the faces in the cheese and the sculptures or whatever I've been making are supposed to be sort of, I thought of myself like looking back at my, like a reflection. Like that I'm just by myself with this charcuterie. I'm having a party by myself. So I'm looking at myself. It's all just me, me, me. Other people interpreted that differently when I put them out at the outdoor market. And I thought that was pretty cool that they were like, oh, maybe this is like other people. Maybe these are your friends or something. I was like, I don't have that many. So I do have some, and they are in this room. But, you know, it's slow for me. I'm not, I don't get close to people so easily. So I think it's a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first 5 years in any new place is very isolating.
Very precarious.
Yeah, and, you know, I feel like if you're in New York City with all the people that are around, it could be the loneliest place in the world.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people, like, oh, there's so many people.
Right.
But I'm right here alone.
Yeah. But that's that idea of feeling invisible.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you find being part of like a community studio to be like accessing people also that are doing creative things, or do you feel like that helps a little bit in finding people? Because it helped me. That's how I made all of my friends, and then through osmosis, other friends and other friends. But my friend group, even though they're not ceramicists, I somehow met in the basement of the studio that I was a technician at.
Yeah, I feel that as I progressed in my New York life and I took on these weird jobs, not so much the garden for the billionaire, that I was isolated and I'm there literally planting an entire organic vegetable garden for her. But when I got into working at the cue card department, I actually felt that all of my team, they're my friend. I mean, you guys are here. Some of you are here. They became my friends. And actually a lot of my, I went through a process from September until December doing EMDR, like trauma recovery therapy. And that was a result of some of my cue card teammates actually opening up and saying, yeah, I've been through that. I do that, and I'm not going to name names because, but it was so helpful to like actually start to trust and to get closer and to open up and have that level of vulnerability, because then you learn and you grow and you can, a lot of this artwork like comes as a result of doing that kind of trauma work, I suppose. Yeah.
Do you want to tell people what EMDR stands for in case?
Oh shit. I think it's like eye movement desensitization and processing or something. I can't remember the full terminology of that, but people who have trauma, and I have like complex PTSD. So within that, like you want to figure out how to process and cope to move forward in your life, like appropriately, so that when you're triggered, which is inevitable and you will be, how do you actually carry yourself? How do you behave and how do you react? And so a lot of what I've done with the ceramics, with the graphic novels, with the paintings, any of my practice, I'm essentially funneling what happens in EMDR or just regular CBT talk, cognitive behavioral therapy, goes into the work. So it goes hand in hand. And actually my therapist was like, do you want to, for your next novel, maybe like put a little, I don't know, a caveat or something and give a kudos or something to EMDR. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to unless I get paid. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So speaking of you being a cue card girl at SNL, can you talk a little bit about what it meant to be a cue card girl? Like, what is the invisible woman or the invisible cue card girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got this job in order to get into that building and to basically use the experience for content. And I've been doing this in all of the graphic novels, which they're in the back part of the room right now. I've made 4. So the cue card girl is the 4th one. And I knew going into this that I was going to be considering for my whole time there, how can I research and absorb all of like this experience and this content? It was never to stay, it was to use it and then leave. And I think for me, the leaving part has been pretty heavy because I obviously, met a lot of incredible people while I was there, and it's sad to, take the next chapter in life. But yeah, I feel this notion of being invisible is very interesting because it is like a lot with self-esteem and not high confidence. And then this traces back to a lot of my like early childhood development with growing up in a household where my father was like the king and he was like not appropriate in how he handled like anger management. And there was a lot of like violence and there was like psychological abuse and all of this happened. Because of that, it goes into the work, like, and it goes into my psyche. So it's like, you start to see like, well, why was this, she could have entered being a cue card girl and already felt like, oh, I can do anything else here. I could write, I could do it, and I'm very creative. I can do anything. But I entered it thinking, well, I'm a nothing. I'm like a piece of shit on the totem pole that's lower than everyone else. Like I'm nobody. And so I had to get myself to a place where I saw myself in order to be visible. But that's like the most difficult thing to do when you already have like this history of like the low self-esteem and all of that, you know, was out of my control in childhood. So yeah, I feel that with, I feel that within—
my favorite.
Awesome. I feel that within the graphic novel, I was always like, for those 5 years of working there, drawing. And this is part of like my daily routine of like, literally I go to a coffee shop every morning and I just draw. And I know that a lot of that content is going to go for an edited novel. So I think through, like I said, the community that I built within the cue card department, having those conversations, therapy, all led to not feeling invisible anymore. But it took like 5 years, and that's like a long time, I guess. Now, you know, I'm already in other jobs that are for content and researching, and there's different conversations that are happening with those. But yeah, for the invisible cue card girl, she needed to like not be invisible anymore. That's like not easy to, yeah.
Indeed, she's not invisible.
And you know what's crazy? I thought I was going into the bathroom during my dinner breaks, which are not that long, and all of my cue card team is like dealing with, anyway, never mind. So I would bring a change of clothes as if I was going to go to the after party, because I'm like, well, I got to network. I got to use this experience. I got to go to the after party. And I didn't know that I could go because I had such a low self-esteem, I suppose, that I thought, well, I'm like such a loser, like I can't go to the after party. And then over time, as I like would bring these pretty dresses and I would take the photo in the bathroom, I would document it and share it on social media. Like, I want to go to the after party. And I never went. And then my boss saw that I was sharing and he said, hey, you can go. Like you're invited, like, and granted, he had to like go with me the first time and like talk about how to behave. You can't take photos of the celebrity. There's a whole thing, but I don't know. I guess I could have asserted myself sooner. Like it took like a while of being there, not realizing that I could like actually go. Yeah. And then I started to go, and it's not really like, it's not anything like that exciting, but yeah, it's worth it because, you know, you want to be a part of the thing.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Did we see any Brian up here?
Brian shows up in this slideshow.
Okay. Do you want to tell folks about Brian?
I'll talk about Brian.
Oh, there he is.
There's Brian.
Brian at his yard sale.
Wearing most of my father and brother's clothing. So we're like very nonlinear in this conversation. I hope that's okay. But I've already, that's in my childhood home. That's, my parents still live there. So Brian, this fictional character that I created during the pandemic. So a lot of things happened like 2020. I said that's when I started working with clay. That's like a lot of stuff happened. But one of the biggest things was that I had to set a boundary like with my dad to not be bad anymore. What does that mean? I wanted to feel that I could be valued and respected and not to have to deal with anger and this kind of violent, angry dad approach, which was all too common for me forever. So around, I don't know what age I was at 2020, whatever, the pandemic hit, and I basically set a boundary saying this is not happening anymore, which is like the craziest thing for me to even fathom that I could do, but I did it. And my father agreed and went through therapy, and he and I are like best friends now. Like, it was an insane process that this man over age 60, 65, I mean, he did this over 65, but I'm just saying his ongoing sentiment was, I can't change. I'm an old man. I am what I am. But guess what? That's not really accurate or true, because anyone can. You just need to like actually want to, and to push yourself and to grow and change. And it is possible. So my father went through a lot of therapy and everything like that. And we were able to basically repair, and I was able to forgive. And there were a lot of like, you know, coming together within that. So Brian is a result of basically like trying to cope with a lot of trauma from that. But there are humorous aspects to that character that within my work, comedy and humor need to be present. Like, it has to coincide, because otherwise it's just too dark and too heavy.
Yeah, if you don't laugh, you cry.
Yeah, if you don't laugh, you cry. And so Brian was a character I made in 2020 looking for love. And this was after I already had this situation with my dad. Everything's like better, developing in a better way. So I basically made this character. My mother filmed me dressed up in my dad's clothes. My dad was like watching the whole thing happen going, what? Well, this is my daughter. Who's Brian? And he just thinks it's like funny and weird. But, you know, I think that over time, the aspects that you see in Brian with all of these objects, that's his estate sale. These are all of the things that Brian owns or what he uses in his lifetime. And they are kind of making commentary on a lot of like silly things about my dad. My dad loves burgers and barbecue and meat. And so you see a lot of these objects kind of showing up in what Brian would own or use that emulate the things that, you know, are a little bit funny with my dad. And yeah, so I made a lot of objects of Brian, and Brian was always looking for love. Like in these dating videos that I made during the pandemic, he was looking for love. So it's my imaginary version of like a man over age 50 who's still single, and he's a little bit like dopey and pathetic, but I love him. And so it's like, you know, that's kind of Brian in a nutshell. It's a lot all piled into one character. And I think it helped me to use humor, use comedy for the things that are very like uneasy and uncomfortable to process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot. I love my dad now. But yeah, he's like super proud, and like he doesn't understand a lot of the work, but I think he gets where I'm going, like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I would get a lot of, Beto, why can't you make something nice?
Yeah, like, well, what does your family think about your work? I mean, we know that your daughter was like mommy angry, but
mommy
like,
mad. Yeah. No, my family's always been very supportive of my work, and you know, some things are more palatable than others, but but yeah, they've always been pretty supportive. We don't talk about what it is or
like
why
the content.
Yeah, that's just not something we talk about. Everything, but not the content of why I'm making or what I'm making. And a lot of the things that I comment on are really like from personal experiences or just from being, you know, a teenage kid. And all of a sudden, well, I grew up in Brooklyn and then we moved to New Jersey. So all of a sudden in a suburban environment, and then there was like bullying and mostly from girls, which was very bizarre to me. So it's just really working through all these like things that you're supposed to be, you're not supposed to be, and like you were talking about seduction or not seduction, like why is it such a bad thing? Can't we just be sexual creatures? So
what is the answer?
I think, yes, we can be everything all at once. We're not one thing, right? Sometimes mommy mad. Sometimes, sometimes mommy's not
Well,
mad.
you know, that
sometimes mommy's face is melting.
that leads me to wonder
So
that
yeah.
within your thought process, that why can't we be sexual beings and all of these things? What then happens to outside viewers looking at our work and shaping an entire perception about
Totally.
who we are and how are we in our actual lives? Because is your work you?
It's part of me. It's
part of you.
It's not the whole me, but
Okay.
I think that that's the interesting part about making art is that when you make something, you can have the intentions of a person who's working through the things that they're working through or the experiences that they've had, but really when someone is looking at it, it's just a reflection of who that person is. So, you know, you might look at this and think it's weird or like quirky, and someone else might think it's like a call, like a seducing thing. So, or it could be both, right? So I think
Yes.
that,
But in our normal lives, like,
we mask. No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
well, I am performing in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's like a huge part of all of my work because
Yeah.
it coincides with my actual life. But maybe yours is a little, because your family's not asking like, oh, why'd you make that sculpture right there? What does that mean? You know? So
Yeah.
maybe it's a little more.
It's an immigrant, like Eastern European family, so we're not like, let's talk about what this means.
Let's talk about feelings.
Let's talk about feelings. Are you okay? Everything's okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I grew up with, which is actually pretty healthy, I think. My family life was, I feel good with my family life.
So maybe like
But-
your female figures, this is a reaction to how you were growing up, getting bullied by
it's
the.
mostly a reaction to women self-hating. So, you know, if you're just basically being bullied by your fellow gals, it doesn't feel right at all. Like it wasn't until college where I really understood that, you know, women aren't bullying each other everywhere. They're actually supportive to each other and they work together. And so it was I think that it was not, maybe because of the school that I was in or like the culture of that place, they just picked a person to harass and it was me.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah. I had that too, but it felt like it was because, you know, a lot of these things I'm saying about neurodiversity and not understanding how, I guess, neurotypical people operate and what they're thinking and how they're feeling. And it like really was confusing for me.
Yeah.
And I went to like a different school that was not the public school. And so a lot of what was going on were kids chastising and like getting really like not nice.
Yeah.
That I was sort of like the other. I was like an outsider or something like different or weird. Yeah. And I think that shows up in the work as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say in school I did not fit neatly into any specific category, so that was uncomfortable for people too.
Yeah.
That's why I spent my lunch period with my art teacher or chemistry teacher.
Yeah, I did that
Just studying.
too. Yeah, I did that.
Anything but
The other
cafeteria.
kids. Yeah, because that's a war zone.
Yeah, it is.
You got to go to battle.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
And there are no cell phones there for refuge, no squares to look deeply into pretending. Anyhow.
No, I know. All right. Awesome. This is depressing. Okay.
It's not
so
depressing,
humor.
actually.
Humor. What?
Making this stuff, I feel like allows me to be a normal person and have decent interactions with people. So I can get everything out and then I can go about my business.
Yes.
So get all your weird out and then you go.
Yeah. I see that. That makes sense. I also have though, like this other aspect of like, people feeling that I am the work, or when they look at the graphic novels that I am that, like she's always naked. I guess I didn't mention that. She's always naked. So when I first moved here and started making these drawings and graphic novels, I removed all of her clothes. And I did this because I thought, well, let's expose everything. Let's really put it out there. Why the hell not? You haven't done it before. Felt very repressed and very like, insecure about so many things. So I was like, okay, let's do this. But now, there's been issues where people perceive me in a certain way because of the work. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like you have that issue. You don't have that issue.
I think I compartmentalize.
Oh, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I overthink everything, Biata.
I don't have enough space to do that. When I do, I always, it's not a pretty picture, so.
Oh, well,
When I
that's like
spiral.
me. That's me in my life, and I spiral.
We're
different.
We're all different.
Anyway. All right.
Thank you so much for this lovely conversation.
Where are we at right now? Are we okay?
We're going to take...
Oh, let's do it. Oh my
gonna take
God, that was
questions.
perfect timing.
I think. Perfect timing. We have time for probably 3 or 4 questions, so does anyone have a question for either me or Lauren? So it depends how big it is, but it starts with planning and prepping. So I'll do a drawing. It's, not a very technical drawing, but I'll figure out where all of the problems are going to be probably, and then I'll start building. So with larger forms, I'm building hollow. So if it's a standing form, then I'll start from the bottom and go up. And because you're building hollow, you're kind of building a contour, so kind of like a 3D printer actually, which is a weird way to sculpt a figure, but it works for me. And I really started doing that because I was too lazy to do the hollowing out thing.
Truth.
Yeah. There in the back.
Good question. When I moved to New York, I moved with like a job that only lasted less than 48 hours. I was working at a law office trying to like assist artists to get their O1 visa. And I lied and said, I'm awesome and I have total like legal experience and I can do this. No, I couldn't. And so that failed. And then I needed to figure out what to do next. And I basically networked my ass off and figured out, it was through social media to get the gardening for the billionaire. So that happened. And then it wasn't planned where I was like, I'm going to make a graphic novel from this. That came later with my other jobs. But with that, I was like, they're not loving the job. And it was like really weird, but I was always drawing. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a graphic novel out of this. And then with cue cards, I needed a different gig. I didn't want to keep going all the way to Westport, Connecticut. So yeah, I saw the actual, what was it? There was like a YouTube video with a documentary about the cue card team. And it was like, oh my God, it was like Brian taught, it was like all of them, but there were no women in the video. And so I found Wally's the head cue card guy, like the boss. And he's been there for like 30 plus years or whatever. But I found his business and his email and I was like, okay, I'm going to like figure this out. How do I get in there? So I wrote a cover letter. I wrote to him and just saying like, hey, I saw the YouTube video there and I'm a woman and I think I do a good job. You don't have any women on your team. And after that, he hired a couple of other women and myself. But it was like, I started thinking when I got that job, I was like, I got to make another graphic novel from this. So it was sort of like, with gallerina as well, like I work at a gallery in Chelsea. So it became more curated, but from the get-go, it was not that cognizant, I think. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Wait, is this for me? This is for me. Oh, yeah, had been speaking with this, I've had the same therapist for like 6 years, and it wasn't always like as regular or steady. There've been some gaps. She's well aware of like all my neuroses and like who I am and why I am the way I am. So that's like super helpful to have like that as a foundation, and to open up and share. So this whole notion of like loneliness has been something I've been dealing with like for my entire life. And so through cognitive behavioral therapy, she was trying to figure out, how can Lauren move out of this space of being like completely isolated and lonely, and learn to trust and learn to get over these like fears of men or distrust and anger and all of these things towards mostly men, which this is like not healthy at all. You need to like bridge that gap, and you can't just like operate in that way for the rest of your life. So yeah, it's been a process. I don't feel that with therapy that it would alter or ruin or anything with my art practice. I think it like is married. It like, I don't like using that word. It's so closely connected and so helpful for me that I guess it's not necessary for anyone else to know all those deeper layers when they look at the work. But now, I mean, I'm sharing a lot because it's like this talk, but this is rare that anybody hears all these other things.
I also think life is very rich, and you'll never lack content.
Hell no.
Of things
There's always stuff that comes up. And
yeah.
I mean, with trauma and recovery, you live with all that. Like, it's not meant to solve or to erase. You have to learn how to live and cope, like knowing that you've been through things that are not so awesome. So yeah, I don't think I'm ever gonna, I would like to have, what's the term? It's like when you have therapy, just like infrequently. It's maintenance. Cool with that. I don't think it needs to be as intensive because I'm like doing pretty good, which is great.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, she had massive
a
daddy
huge
issues.
influence.
She had, come on. She's like the mommy of
She also had a lot of issues about being the woman of the house and having the responsibilities
Yes.
of the woman of the house.
Yes.
So, but Louis Bourgeois and Hans Bellmer. Do you remember that show?
I love Hans Bellmer.
Which he's a disgusting perv. And,
Yeah, totally. But processed it
his
through
work
his
was
culture.
amazing. Sorry, is that a
You
is
can
that
say
a hot
that.
topic?
You can say whatever you want.
But yeah, those were big influences.
Yes, I feel like
Also Ernst Haeckel, strangely. I don't know. I really like Ernst Haeckel.
I look at a lot of artists that, well, I surround myself with a lot of creative professionals, a lot of visual artists that are doing similar things, like with their work, whether it's film or it's sculpture or painting, whatever it is. Their whole practice is about like dealing with these kinds of similar topics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's like the best question. I'm so glad that you asked that, because here's the thing, and I'm going back to bell hooks. Let's go to bell hooks. You can't find love until you love yourself. So the answer is yes, I love myself now. So I'm not in a relationship with another human, but I look forward to that. And I'm so glad that I finally got to a place where I can even be comfortable with so much of the stuff that I just shared today. So love is on the way. For Brian and Lauren and God knows whoever characters, it's on the way. Yeah, it's inevitable. I believe in love. And on that note, I don't know what time it is, you guys. Yes. Yeah, so how are we dealing with illustration as our, well,
Yeah, it's like visual storytelling. Yeah, a lot of the way that all my sculptures came about, or the way that I compose them or think about ideas, is very much, I think, formed in the way that we're trained to think about it when we're illustrating to communicate an idea or a story. So I would say illustration has a lot to do with the way my sculptures look.
I feel that it's like the quickest way for me in the morning as like sort of a daily routine or a process that I go and I literally just put pen to paper and I do my thing. So it's ruminating on so many like I do I didn't mention this. I do morning walks with my father. It's remote fitness. We started doing this during the pandemic. And after I have those lengthy, like hour-long conversations with him, I go to the coffee shop and I draw. So stuff comes out, whether it's thinking about the jobs I have or the interactions I've had, all that stuff. So I guess illustration for me is like the quickest format. And it's kind of like, whatever comes from my brain and goes straight to the paper. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Let's eat food.